For the opportunity to be here today. I wanted to give an overview of the Global Digital Health Certification Network, or GDHCN, and its relationship to the Pan American Highway for Health, some updates around the international health regulations, and some resources that you can utilize as you prepare for the Connectathon that's coming up, and hopefully by the end of this discussion, we'll have a better sense of how all these things fit together. And I'll do my best to the interpreter to go at a not too fast of a pace, but I apologize if in advance if I'm a little too fast. So first of all, just a little general background of what we're doing and why we're doing it. WHO released the global strategy on digital health that was ratified by all member states that covers 20 to 2025. And in here, there's a few key notes around using open source health data standards, reusable systems, using different digital technologies and shared services, and to promote syntactic and semantic interoperability. These the global strategy has 4 main objectives: promoting global collaboration, advancing the implementation of national digital health strategies, strengthening governance for digital health at the global, regional, and national level, and advocating for people-centered health systems that are enabled by digital health. So all that we're talking about today and all that we're doing with the Connectathon is really towards this strategy. The strategy has actions for both WHO as well as for you as member states. On the WHO side, we want to ensure that we have and advocate for a common digital health architecture, support the implementation of digital health transformation. We support the development of regulatory frameworks for international health data, including global interoperability standards, and most importantly, to support member states and you all to use person-centric digital health devices and systems. And as part of doing that, one of the ways that we're supporting the strategy and reaching the objectives of the strategy is to look at digital public infrastructure. Starting with at the foundation, the technology infrastructure, such as the data centers, electricity, networks, and then we go into digital public infrastructure. And what we're talking about today is a mixture between digital public infrastructure and digital public infrastructure for a sector, particularly for health. And so we're talking about public key infrastructure, which is the Global Digital Certification Network. And then we're going to talk about different types of services, registries that are built upon this for health. And so what we're looking at today and in ways that investments are being made into digital health is often with the lens of digital public infrastructure increasingly. And so looking at the discussion today with that lens on could also help drive and provide new opportunities for funding and investment. If we look at the health specific area, we can look at the foundational digital public infrastructure, the health specific, and then applications are built on that. A lot of the applications that you typically use, such as an electronic medical record system, an app at a community health system, a lab system, those are all point of service applications that build on a digital public infrastructure. I want to highlight in this view 2 key parts of this. At a foundational level, we have the trust network, which we'll be talking about in a little bit more detail in a moment. And at an individual level is a digital health wallet. And here's where the notion of an individual holding their own health data and choosing as they go visit health clinics, go to hospitals, seek care, or travel to exchange and utilize their own health data for needs and under their own consent. And so this view of digital public infrastructure for health is one that we want to support and through these global interoperability standards and through the upcoming Connectathon. This trust network that was highlighted, one of the foundational components is the WHO Global Digital Health Certification Network, which lets us provide a way to verify health credentials, health documents across borders. This is a 3-step process. The first step is to share, for a country to share their public keys to WHO. So the public key is used to verify a digital signature on a health document. And WHO, as a trust anchor, is taking up the responsibility of making sure that somebody purporting to be from country A and providing the public keys used to verify these documents is really that individual. Once that has happened, WHO will aggregate and then distribute all of these verified public keys to members of the trust network. So we'll talk a little bit about how to join the trust network a little bit later and the relationship to the Connectathon. And then once those keys have been distributed, they're available at the country level to be used to verify the provenance of a health document. At that point, in step 3, WHO is no longer a part of the interaction. It's between individuals and between countries. So WHO has no insight as to which documents are being verified, who's verifying them, whose documents they are. That's between the country states. WHO is just acting as a very fancy phone book for this or directory of these public keys. It's one of the key health documents that we can utilize in a trust network is the International Patient Summary, which is a minimal, non-exhaustive data set. It's specialty agnostic and condition independent, but clinically relevant for those that seek care. We see this useful for tourism, whether it's routine tourism, medical tourism. It could be mass gatherings, as the Hajj pilgrimage that just happened in June. It could be to migration due to climate change, failed states, or other reasons for migration due to economic benefits. It can be used for continuity of care, particularly looking at the International Patient Summary and the use of the LACPASS Connectathon coming up. That, as I understand, is one of the key use cases. And additionally, for vaccination records, both routine childhood vaccination records and special vaccination records related to yellow fever and polio can be represented in this International Patient Summary. And so it becomes a good base container for a lot of clinical use cases for public health measures and for the typical information that we want to share. We want to make sure that this IPS can be accessed by every individual and shared with their consent across. And so the way that GDHCN supports this International Patient Summary is to establish a trust domain. The trust domain are the content specifications for the use cases, for a set of use cases. That content specification could be the IPS. Set of trusted services related to the issuance, verification, and revocation of those health documents. And then standardized policies and procedures that are relevant to each of these use cases. And so as part of the preparation for the Roxelle Connectathon, the GDHCN is establishing a PH4H trust domain, which will encompass the use of the IPS, vaccination certificates for these continuity of care use cases. We look today, as of last week, you can see the countries that are in the process or have already joined the Global Digital Health Certification Network. Those that are in green have fully joined. The ones that are not in green are partially going through. That could be going through the technical preparations, as you all are by participating in the LACPASS Connectathon, or have indicated their intention to join, but have not fully gone through all the technical preparations yet. So how do you, now coming back to the Pan American Highway for Digital Health, in the strategy document, it says there's three steps to get involved. One is to send your letter of intent to IDD. The second is to join the GDHCN, the Global Digital Health Certification Network, as a way to help verify health documents. And third is to join the Roxelle network. So you can see sort of these steps are what are outlined in this strategy document for the Pan American Highway for Digital Health, which is about ensuring patient safety and trusted health information verification enabling cross-border health services, and encouraging regional agreements and regulatory frameworks that allow that data sharing, enhancing coordination among the countries, and the adoption of interoperability standards, and a few more. But all the things that we're talking about today are really in support of the goals that are outlined here. To join the GDHCN, you can go to smart.who.int/trust for all the documentation, and then it outlines an onboarding process. But what will be happening during this Connectathon is that you'll be taking up some of the steps on this onboarding process to join the network. You can see in the documentation that we have letters of application to join in Spanish, in English, and among other languages. And so we'll take you through the steps and really being able to participate fully in the Global Digital Certification Network. So one of the reasons for joining the GDHCN is for the goals that you've articulated under the Pan American Highway for Health, which includes the use of the IPS and routine immunization records. Another reason to consider joining, and I just wanted to highlight, is the international health regulations. Back in the May at the World Health Assembly, there were proposed amendments to the international health regulations that were presented and approved by member states. So now we have a international treaty that's been approved by all WHO member states that outlines updates to the international health regulations. So the international health regulations, if you're not familiar with those, govern the use of the yellow book or the yellow card. It's where you have yellow fever and polio vaccines. And prior to the amendments, it was only a paper version of that yellow book that could be accepted. With the new amendments, a digital version of that ICVP, or International Certificate of Vaccination and Prophylaxis, is now feasible to use across countries. And the Global Digital Certification Network is going to be one of the foundational digital public infrastructure that we can use for the digital form of the ICVP. Going through, you can see in bold some of the changes to the amendments. But just to highlight in here, there were some changes in the model form, including some additional data fields, but also authorizing the use of not just a physical signature by the supervising clinician, but also other digital means for verification of the ICVP, or International Certificate of Vaccination and Prophylaxis. And so this digital means of verification through the GDHCN is going to be something that will be quite important going forward as countries move towards implementing the updates to the international health regulations. We've already started the process of prototyping what the ICVP looks like, and all of the work that you're doing for this Rexel Connectathon is also very much in line in the work that we're doing for the ICVP, just slightly different flavors of the same health content. But you can see here that we've taken that model ICVP that we saw on the previous slide and put it into something more computable in an implementation guide. And we're, in addition to just representing that data in this data model, we'll include maps to and from the International Patient Summary. So if you can produce an IPS, which you'll be doing during this Connectathon, then you'll automatically get for free the ability to produce these vaccination cards, or the digital ICVP. There's a couple of ways to present it. One, the vaccine certificates. One of the ways that we'll be looking at is looking at the taking the EU QR code standards for COVID certificates and slightly adapting them and generalizing them to be used for the ICVP, which covers yellow fever and polio. And we've already started that prototyping work. So if you participated in the EU digital COVID certificate network and went through that experience, you will already have the experience and the knowledge to produce the the digital ICVP QR codes and certificates. If you're interested in being engaged in a working group on the digital ICVP, please email the GDHCN Secretariat at gdhcn-secretariat@who.int. And what we're going to be looking at is all the technical specifications for operationalizing the digital ICVP. So build again on the work that you're doing in Connectathon for Roxelle, but with a focus on the yellow fever and polio specific use cases. Finally, I just want to close with a few slides about some of the resources that we've been preparing in support of the Connectathon, and some other additional resources. First is we have been working with the IDB team and on very closely in defining the technical specifications, including an implementation guide for PH4H that defines the use cases, some of the profiles for the use of IPS, and consents for sharing of the international patient summary within the PH4H context. So that's available and something that we can point you to. We're also working on some software tools, including a universal verifier app that was originally used for the COVID certificates and updating it to use the vaccine certificates, or routine vaccine certificates, including the digital ICVP. This will also pull the necessary credentials or public keys from the Global Digital Health Certification Network. So if you have a QR code or a vaccine card from one country and you want to share it with the other, you can leverage the GDHCN for this and this verifier app. All of this is, again, based on open standards. These software tools are just reference implementations, and they're open source, but you're free to utilize them as they implement these open standards. Next is a validator app that's more focused on the international patient summary rather than the vaccine cards. And we'll use something called the verifiable smart health links or verifiable health links for sharing the international patient summary on a QR code or a link to the international patient summary. We have a validator app that will go through all the steps of verification to make sure that you have compliant QR codes and ways to access the IPS. Finally, here's a list of contact information and technical specifications. We'll share the slides so that you have these readily available, and just want to thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Carl, I have a question. If there's no specific questions from the countries yet, would you mind maybe just giving a little bit of an update of other trust networks that are currently in production, maybe just to kind of talk about that as additional context? Thanks.
Sure. So there's a few trust networks that are operating. One is we still have the COVID certificate trust network use case in running up globally. Luckily, we don't need to make much use of that now that the COVID pandemic is no longer a public health emergency of international concern. The second use case is related to the Hajj pilgrimage that happens in Mecca. There they use the international patient summary and these verifiable health links that we mentioned in the previous slides for the pilgrims coming from Malaysia, Indonesia, and Oman to visit Mecca and Medina in Saudi Arabia. They had over 260,000 IPS health documents issued for the pilgrims that were traveling and seeking care during the Hajj pilgrimage. Other questions?
You've got one in the chat.
Yeah. Maybe David, you can ask. You can open your mic. Or we can just read the chat.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to unmute. Good
Great.
day, everyone. Hi, Carlos. So the resource library for in GitHub is all of the downloadable codes and parameters in the GitHub.io file.
That's one of the places. There are a few places, and we can, we can try to consolidate those for the to make it easy. But the smart.who.in/trust, that's the main repository for all information related to the GDHCN. And then we have a separate one that's specific for PH4H that depends on that smart.who.in/trust. And that is I think the github.io one that you saw. I'll put that link in chat if just to confirm that that's the one that you were looking at. And then those are the specifications, the documentation for the use cases and the trust network. Then for each of the software tools, they're their own GitHub repositories and documentation themselves. So I think we had the link for the verifier app was on one of the slides, and the GDHCN validator for the IPS. It was supposed to be released open source perhaps last week. I've been on leave, so I'm not sure if that actually came out yet or not. But that will be open source. And then the Trust Network Gateway that WHO is operating is also an open source with its own tool, with its own set of documentation as well. I hope that's answering your question. It's probably too many resources at this point.
No, thank you. That's fine. And once we have access to it, we'll be able to decipher the installation.
Yeah. I see there's another question in chat. This is around IPS validation. And yeah, so what's in the IPS that's on the link that I just put in was related to the consent resource. I don't think it has any, unless I misremembering something, I don't think there's anything related to observations that would address your question.
I
Yeah,
think the question is related to the Connectathon and the validators, not necessarily the GDHCN.
yeah.
But you have another one previously from Adriana regarding to join the network.
Okay, thank you, Adriana. Yeah, so it's relatively simple to join the Trust Network. You have to send a letter, a signed letter to WHO. That could be sent to the WHO country office or to headquarters. That outlines your intent to participate in the Global Digital Certification Network. Right now, it's tied to specific use cases and trust domains. So you could join for the COVID certificate use case or for Hajj pilgrimage. I know there aren't a lot of Hajj pilgrims coming from the Latin American Caribbean region, but we are also working on a letter of application that will just be a generic letter of application to join, as well as a specific one for PH4H. So hopefully those will be ready in the next few weeks. But you can already join now with the existing letters of application. That's the first step of the formal step in the process. You would also need to go through the technical preparations, and by participating in the Roxelle Connectathon, that is going through a lot of the technical preparations that are needed. And then finally, you would just need to share some technical details about where your public keys are, and how to make them available to WHO. So for that, you set up essentially a GitHub repository with your keys in it, and let us know where that GitHub repo is. Hopefully that's answering your question, Adriana. If not, happy to provide more.
Carl, maybe I just want to like reiterate your point. So the letters are almost, just to repeat them. So the letters will be sent, a template is still being worked on that allows you to join the Pan American Highway for Digital Health Trust domain. Those will be sent out shortly. So you'll have those very soon so you can send them in. But the second part is that I think this is really good news. Because of Carl and his team working with us on the process with the Connectathon, if you participate in the Connectathon and you have your PKI and you pass all those tests, you don't have to do it again, right? So I think this is a huge plus, right? So you guys remember, for those of you that did the EU DCC work, you did the Connectathon with us, and then you had to go back to the EU and do it again. This time you won't have to, because WHO is going to support us during the Connectathon. So it saves time for the country. So you just have to do it once. So I just wanted to say it's really important to join the Connectathon and be prepared. And we have a whole team. I'll let Carlos and maybe Fernando comment on that. There's a team of people that are available to help you with like the types of questions that Mabi mentioned here, and just to preparing for the Connectathon. If you need support for that we're all coordinating very closely with Carl and his team.
Ready? Yes, only to mention that all the technical teams and the groups of the countries were working on the two tracks, and remember the IPS track and the vaccination track. Both tracks requires that all the countries has a signature and the keys that will be part of the Global Digital Health Certification Network, and we will use on the tracks the issue of this with the primary key that allows to be used on the QR codes that we verified by other countries. So the process are include the upload or the onboarding of each country on the Global Digital Health Certification Network. Both tracks we will produce IPS with that could be verified with this directory, and vaccination certificates that could be verified too with this directory. So we are in the process. First, we are working now on the first track, the IPS track, and now we define the flow about vaccination with the specification that Carl shows today with the ICP BF and the DCC. So it will part of our tracks that all the technical teams are producing with the tasks that we are doing now.
Eric.
Thank you, colleagues. Just quickly, Carl, to confirm two things. The first one is regarding the letter of application. So on the website, as you already mentioned, the letter is available in multiple languages. It does still refer to COVID-19. So just confirming that it's okay for countries to fill up that letter and send it to you. Also acknowledge that you mentioned that it's being updated. So at this point, is it better for countries to wait for the updated version to come out, or should they be filling up that letter that still refers to the COVID-19 structure?
If any countries are super eager, then go ahead and fill out the letter for COVID as is. But I think it should be very soon that the new letter is back. It's going through legal review. I'm actually on leave right now, so it might actually be ready. I just haven't gone through all my email yet. So but it should be available soon. And yeah, I would suggest you just wait.
Thank you for that. And then my second point is more of a general comment. I realize there's a lot of traction with the IPS and all these cross-border coordinations and artifacts that are already published, and it's looking great, aligned with the smart guidelines and everything. On the other hand, there's an opportunity to continue to leverage these resources internally for countries, meaning that if a country already has a number of documents, clinical documents that are being generated, those can easily leverage the trust network for added security, so the documents can be validated within the borders of the country. And there's several use cases that can be implemented using this technology to validate and add trust across partners, private providers, different donors within a country. So I think there's also an opportunity to look at those use cases. There might be more of a lower hanging fruit internally for countries. So yeah, and as it was already mentioned, we're definitely ready to support and looking through each individual case and figure how we can best support their particular needs. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. And I should highlight, and maybe it was implicit, that as GDHCN is digital public infrastructure, it's for you to use. There'll be some things like the international health regulations that WHO will establish at a global scale, because that's the policy framework. But things like PH4H, which is a regional, it's up to you all to define and what use cases, what technical specifications that you want to utilize, and just basically inform us what those are so that we can keep track and help coordinate. And yes, using it at national level as well, please make use of that infrastructure. You don't need to deploy it for yourself if it makes sense for your context.
Anyone else? Questions? ¿Alguien más con preguntas?
Who's super excited about it? I mean, I'm super excited. So I don't know. Anyone else super excited about that? I think it's going to be great.
Sí,
Carlos, does
sí.
everybody know which countries are signed up for the Connectathon? So these will be the countries that will be technically
Quería
prepared.
eso mismo, quería aprovechar, bueno, que nos quedan algunos minutos y si no hay muchas más dudas para ir cerrando con comentarios asociados también cómo se relaciona, y cambio español, la Connectathon de este año asociado a lo que es el Trust Framework de GDHCN. Recordar que los dos tracks que vamos a probar este año en la Connectathon tienen un prerequisito, y ese prerequisito va asociado a la validación, a la verificación a través de llaves de firma digital, del documento clínico o del certificado de vacunación, que son parte de un documento para cada track, digamos, que vamos a trabajar este año. Y la idea es hacerlo, como lo hicimos el año pasado, a través de utilizando el ambiente de desarrollo de la GDHCN, pero la idea es ahora también quedar listos con todo el proceso asociado también hacia lo que es el ambiente productivo de la GDHCN, porque la vamos a estar utilizando, la idea es potenciarla y que todos quedemos con el conocimiento sobre efectivamente bien cómo hacer este proceso de onboarding. Es prerequisito, así se explicó en las reuniones uno a uno con los países también. Eh, Separar un poco las aguas, sí, el trabajo para el ambiente de desarrollo es distinto del trabajo productivo, van en paralelo, eh, pero sepan que en la Connectathon nuevamente vamos a estar utilizando este ambiente de la GDHCN en ambos tracks, ¿ya? Probablemente cuando estemos en las últimas pruebas, antes de alguna semana antes de la Connectathon, haremos a través de los monitores y del squad técnico con cada uno de los países este recorrido eh, por cada parte del circuito y veremos también en detalle estos aspectos de firma, para que lo tengan presente. Entonces también es parte fundamental de lo que va a ser nuestra Connectathon 2024. Y bueno, ahí comparte Eric Ramírez, gracias por compartir el correo. Hemos levantado, tenemos disponible un correo para todas sus dudas asociadas a la GDHCN, que es gdhcn@raxel.org, para todo lo que pueda quedar allí en el tintero asociado al proceso de cómo integrarse bien a la red, lo que sea. Nos pueden contactar vía ese correo. Ahí está Eric, nuestro asesor, va a estar también preocupado de poder responder todas sus dudas. Si no hay más preguntas, más comentarios, algo que se nos va, alguien que quiera agregar algo, no sé, Hani, Jenny.
I want to thank Carl for joining us on his leave. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
And thanks to all of you guys that joined. I think this is a huge opportunity for the region because this will be the first time that we'll have a live trust network for health in our region that allows us to connect across countries. So let's see who are the first countries to join. And we're excited.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Carl. And thank you everyone. Gracias a todos por estar presente en la sesión de hoy. Recordar que quedará disponible también esta sesión para su consulta posterior. Que tengan un muy buen resto de semana entonces. Thank you very much, Carl, again. Hope to see you soon. Thanks for your presentation. And thanks
Thank
to
you.
the participants. Nos vemos. Que estén muy bien.
Bye.
Bye.
Chao, chao. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, una buena tarde.
Bye.